Good morning, and the smile that is on my face is because one of my favorite people has dropped in. I do a lot of interviews with a lot of different people. Few people excite me like Collin Wilson. This guy is knowledgeable. I don't even know what the hell your title is. I don't know if you consider yourself a reporter, an analyst, a handicapper. I don't know what it is. I just know the man's got a wealth of information. He's always enjoyed to. He's from the Action Network. And every time he's on, everybody always says, you should have him on more often. I'm like, yeah, but I can't. I own twice a year. I can't wear him out. Collin, good morning to you. How is everything going in your world? Because we all love the backdrop.
Anwar, I live pretty close to my campus here. I'm a University of Arkansas alum. We finally got some rain for the first time in like 35 days. So I'm pretty happy that I don't have to worry about my yard getting burned up. And I'm glad you had me on now, because once Texas comes up here to Fayetteville, I'm disappearing. We're going to get our tails kicked in. I'm leaving.
you really think that's going to happen? That Texas is going to get their tails kicked? That's fine. That's right. You do live up in Arkansas, don't you?
Yeah, just outside. I live in Rogers, just outside of Fayetteville. So closer to the program, at least enough to get some information if I need it.
You know, have you ever been to Big Orange?
Yes, Big Orange actually is right down the road for me. It's one of the best burgers. My daughter has her favorite queso there too.
So I went to the Big Orange. I don't know how many locations that they have. I was sitting there a couple of years ago, was at the bar, just eating my food, had a couple of old fashions, went to cash out, and the lady said, "Okay, I'll be right back." And a few minutes later, she said, "You don't have to pay." And I said, "No, what do you mean I don't have to pay?" She goes, "The owner saw that you were here, and he's a huge Longhorn fan, and he says it's on him." I was like, "Shit, I should have ordered more if that's the case."
Yeah, usually it goes the other way. Usually Razorback alums go down to Texas. Not a lot of Texas alums come up to Fayetteville, but, we're growing.
So, Kyle, I want to kind of talk about where Texas is right now. Texas obviously is in a bye week at this moment. There are only a few more games remaining. I think this might be the schedule here. Actually, I asked him to update the schedule, so I don't know where he put it. So we got that after the bye week. They've got Florida at Arkansas, as you have mentioned, then Kentucky, then Texas A&M. Kind of give me your thoughts, because the question for me becomes, hey, can Texas run the table here? What's the possibilities as you kind of think about that and outline it in your head?
Yeah, with the Florida game, we're projecting that to be minus 15 in favor of the Longhorns. And now you have to see that Florida and Billy Napier are going through the worst stretch of the entire season. They're starting off with Georgia this weekend. It's just game after game. It includes LSU in the mix. So I think by the time they get around to Texas next week, they're going to have probably a pretty hard time covering. After that, I've got Texas being minus 12 up in Fayetteville against Arkansas. Should be a hot crowd, but you know what? I think Sark got taken to the woodshed in his first season. I don't think he's forgotten about that. Arkansas's got some troubles in the secondary, so I think it's going to be a pretty bad game for the Razorbacks. Texas minus 17.5 against Kentucky, and then finally the game where I think it could be the upset of the season. I've got Texas minus 4 at Texas A&M. They're in Kyle Field. There are just things with the Texas team, specifically in the trench, that really make me think that Texas A&M defensive line can really give Texas some issues.
Wow. Okay, so let's go back to it for a second, Collin. So let's go back to Florida. How bad are they at this moment in your opinion?
I have them actually covering this weekend against Georgia. I know it's a number around like 16. It's about where I make it 16, but there's this whole story floating out there that the defense went to Billy Napier and they asked for him to chill out with the complexities of the defense. They wanted to trim it down, their concepts in the back, what their blitz schemes are in the front. They asked Austin Armstrong, the defensive coordinator, to kind of lay back on those, play a little bit more base. And there's been a huge difference in this team over the last couple of weeks. And DJ Lagway is doing great on the ground with a freshman running back now. Georgia pretty much should stop that. I don't see a lot of points in this game. I don't think Florida's going to go out and blaze the world, but I just think there's going to be so much defense in that game play that Florida's going to be able to cover.
Okay, so Florida has by the way, there's a few things that are huge indicators when everything's going bad. the moment we're mid-season and you have to scale back the playbook, usually there's certain things that you like, the whistles that you hear and you're like, when I hear scale back the playbook and you only got 4 games left or so, I'm like, oh, well, this is not good.
Right. Obviously, it wasn't the playbook the entire time, but who knows what the true story is there. But the players and the coaches at Florida all seem to be on the same page for once, and pretty good performance from a freshman running back there, Jaden Baugh. So we'll see how he does this weekend.
So then it came when Arkansas comes around. You have Texas as a double-digit favorite there, which is interesting. Texas was a double-digit favorite going against Vanderbilt just a week or so, correct? So Arkansas, what am I missing here? Because Arkansas just had a big win. I just think they dropped 58 points just the other week. Why do you think Texas would be so much better on the road in a place that just a couple of years ago they couldn't pull out a win?
Yeah, I think that this is a revenge game for Sark, to tell you the truth. But from the Arkansas side, they are completely beat up. This weekend, you're going to see them have a problem because they don't have any running backs to assist Taylor Green with the RPO. Right now, Braylon Russell, who went last week, we think his hamstring is completely blown out. Jaquindon Jackson, our transfer from Utah, he's beat up. Didn't even practice this week. Doubt he's going to play this weekend. You cannot run Taylor Green in RPO if you don't have running backs to assist him in the zone read concepts, or else Taylor's just going to be scrambling all over the place, which is not good against the Texas defense, because I think the Texas edges, they're much better at contain than they are up the middle. So there's a lot of disadvantage I see. Plus, the game's at 11 a.m. Why couldn't you give us a saucy 6:30 p.m. to allow all my Razorback friends to get lubed up? Why do you have to make it this 11 a.m. thing? So
it's not okay. So then when it gets to Kentucky, is it as simplistic as if you score 3 points, you'll probably beat Kentucky? I mean, like, is their offense just that anemic that, look, their defense might be kind of decent, which, by the way, they weren't that great in this past week.
Right.
Is it just, hey, they just don't have enough firepower to hang with a Texas team?
Well, not only that, they don't have the offensive firepower. It's never worked out with Brock Vandegrift. But I think more importantly, my podcast over at Action Network, sometimes we call our teams on quit watch. And you have to wonder with Kentucky getting blown out as they have a couple of times on defense. This is supposed to be one of the best defenses in the nation. Kentucky is definitely one of those teams that's on quit watch right now. So they're not performing to what their expectation is in their stats, but they never have offensively. Now the defense is all of a sudden taking on a lot of points. I mean, somehow Florida's offense figured this out with a freshman quarterback against Kentucky's defense. So, yeah, the Wildcats are on quit watch.
And then when I look at the SEC standings, it kind of bleeds into the final team, which is, we're talking about, which is A&M. Are you a believer in the Aggies as far as where they're at right now? Are you a believer in Elko and everything? Like, I'm just kind of curious. And I'll ask you who you think will make the SEC championship game. But I want to do an A&M specific question for you.
Yeah. I think A&M can upset Texas all the way, and it's because of what's going to happen in the trench. Texas is having a severe problem with line yards on offense. That means they're not creating enough holes with the offensive line for the running game to get started. That allows extra pressure on Quinn Ewers, and sometimes he's, there's tape out there now on how to get him rattled, and him being pulled out for Arch, I'm not sure if that plays a psychological factor against Georgia. I think Sark's got about 3 games to get ready for Texas A&M, because that defensive line will be the worst thing that any Texas quarterback could ever see. They are dominating college football. But I think, Anwar, the more important reason why I like Texas A&M is Mike Elko has an offense that has 2 different quarterbacks with 2 different skill sets, and that duality can win the national championship. When you have a player that is pass only in the pocket and can blaze secondaries, or you have a freshman RPO quarterback that can run with Le'Veon Moss all over the place, you have 2 dual threats that can attack you in different ways. And for Texas, that's not a good thing. There's secondary. There's still some questions out there. There's still some questions about the run defense on the interior of the Texas line. These are things that Texas A&M can attack. And I think you're going to try to see this out of Penn State this weekend, not to veer off, but teams that have the ability to have an RPO quarterback and a deep shot quarterback passing wise, they have multi-dimensions that defenses can't prepare for. So let's see what Texas A&M does over the next 3 weeks, and we'll see if Sark can get the Longhorns defense ready for 2 quarterbacks with 2 different attributes.
So, Collin, I'm going to get into something that you wrote here, and I'm going to put this here on the screen. I asked my producer to make a full screen of this. He did not. So Let's talk about who you got your best bet to making the SEC championship game. It's Georgia.
Yep.
It's on the screen. Everyone's not going to read it all. So, what's your take on Georgia, and why are they for you the best bet as far as making it to Atlanta?
They have the easiest path to get in there. If you look at them, they travel to Ole Miss on November 9th. A lot of people think that's going to be a close game. Georgia put up a 50-burger last year and won by 35, and I'm supposed to expect that this Ole Miss team is going to close the gap on 35 points, and they definitely can if Trey Harris does not get healthy, because he's the biggest piece of the offense. After that, Georgia's going to they're going to host Tennessee. I read Kirby Smart's notes a couple of years ago about how to defend Josh Heupel's wide split spread offense, and nobody does it better than Georgia. Just go look at their games. Georgia not only beats them, covers the spread every time, and it's because they know how to play quarters coverage, stiff those wide receivers at the line of scrimmage, and get the quarterback off his timing. So I don't think Tennessee has a shot to win that game. So when you take that into consideration and you do all the odds and the probability, Georgia should be minus 120 to make it to Atlanta. The market specifically, I believe it's at DraftKings, they are offering plus 110 on Georgia to make it to Atlanta. So there is mathematical value here, and there is an easier path than most other teams in the SEC to make it.
So if you got Georgia at the number one, who's your number two team then?
It comes down to the Texas A&M battle. And I mean, numerically, I would say it's Texas, because I'd have them favored against the Aggies. But when you deep dive into that game, the Aggies have a real true shot of shaking up that Texas offensive line, putting pressure on Arch or Quinn, whoever is at quarterback, and really making a lot of disturbance. So, I mean, if I had to pick a game today, I'd say it'd be Texas A&M and Georgia. But it is the Texas A&M game that's going to serve as a semifinal to an SEC championship, which serves as a first-round game to the college football playoff.
Yeah, exactly. And so let's talk about the playoffs, Collin, for a second. How many SEC teams do you think will probably make it in? I've got several different, mocks, playoff projections. I'm sure you have your own playoff projection as well. Right. But I'm kind of curious, one, how many SEC teams that make it in, and then do you have your own top four right now as we speak?
Yeah, I will say that we had this topic. Brett McMurphy and I have our show over at Action Network. We released our brackets, our updated brackets, and I got absolutely torched. The reason was because my 9, 10, and 11 seeds were SMU, Kansas State, and Indiana. And I know, and when you hear the name Indiana, it's hard not to laugh. But let's be honest here. If you have a schedule, if you have 0 or 1 loss right now, and you have a schedule that says you can sweep the rest of the year, why would you be left out of the playoff? As an 11-1 SMU team that can't get into the ACC championship because of tiebreakers, are they going to be left out of the playoff? If Kansas State's in the same scenario in the Big 12, they could be blocked out of that championship game. But if they finish 11-1, are you going to keep them out? So, Anwar, the big question is, do you believe 2-loss SEC teams are going to make it in above potentially the Indianas that just have 1 loss against Ohio State? And my argument is, I don't know how you're taking 2 SEC loss teams over 1 loss teams in other conferences. You've essentially defeated the college football playoff reasoning for expansion already by saying I'm still taking 2 loss teams over 1 loss teams that did the best with their schedule. It's a really tough argument. And I'm an SEC guy all the way. I always have been since I moved over from the Southwest Conference in 1992. But and I believe that the teams are tougher in the SEC. But if you're taking simple positions away with more losses and just blaming it on schedule, then why are we even having a Power 4 conference? Why don't we just make it to Power 2 and just get to the 16 team and call it the FCS National Championship?
Yeah, so because that's where I was. Because, prior to the season, it seemed like people would say, well, a 3-loss SEC team could make it in, right? I mean, that seemed to be the conversation. That doesn't seem to be the conversation people are having now. Like, it seems to be totally different.
Yeah, completely. There's I think 3 losses, you're definitely out of this, which makes all these games down the stretch more interesting. I remember seeing you in the summer and thinking, is the regular season watered down? Because some head coaches are talking about load management. Maybe we don't play as many kids in November if we're in a good position. I don't see anybody that comfortable right now. Everybody needs a win to get into the playoff. But I think that's just a basic question that everybody individually is going to disagree about. A 2-loss SEC team over a 1-loss Big 10, ACC, Big 12 team.
So from a Texas perspective, Do you have them in your top 4, or do you have them around that like 7-ish kind of range and probably hosting, first round game?
I have them at number 6.
Number 6, okay.
Yeah, I have them at number 6, and I have them advancing. Let me see if I can find my bracket. I don't have it in front of me. I know I just looked at it, but I do know I have them as the number 6 seed and advancing. After that, for me, it becomes into a matchups thing. And if you run into Georgia again, we're gonna have to rise to the occasion here because the physicality is going to catch up. I mean, you may be able to survive these first round games against some of these teams, but when the physical teams come to Texas, that's going to be something worth watching.
Have you seen a team this year that you feel like that is the dominant team in college football, or is it too much parity for you to actually say that?
I can say that about certain offenses, and I can say that about certain defenses. And the problem is I haven't really been able to put it together because Carson Beck looked terrible against Texas, right? I mean, if you could get the Georgia offense to get in the dance with the Georgia defense and put it together on both sides of the ball, I don't understand how the second half of Georgia against Clemson, you're scoring 1 billion points. And then other points, Carson Beck just disappears for 3 quarters. The offense has never been able to get a whole full game played at least when it's counted. So I would say Texas A&M and Georgia's defense would be the ones I would not want to face from an offensive standpoint. If Tennessee is somehow able to get their offense to run and they get into a rhythm, they would be impossible to stop. But Nico Iamaleava can't stop getting sacked. The guy is he every time he gets touched, he goes down. It's been a real problem for Tennessee.
Yeah. Do you got a dark horse team, or is SMU kind of your dark horse playoff team? Is that kind of self-evident as far as that is concerned?
Yeah, I've had SMU love because of the ease of the schedule, right? It's one of the easiest schedules. They don't play Miami. They don't play Clemson. They kind of lucked out on this. I mean, they're playing a Pitt team this weekend that might have a beat-up quarterback in Eli Holstein. So SMU has caught a ton of breaks. I don't think we should mix up dark horse in this scenario with a team that I think that can do some damage. I think SMU is a team that's being priced out there about plus 175. If they win out, they're not going to be in the ACC championship because of their strength of schedule within the conference. So are you going to keep them out of the playoff? I think the answer is no. So I think they slip in, but just because I think they're a dark horse to get in the playoff, I don't think they have any shot of beating a team like Miami or Texas or any team with bigger beef in the trench and better skill positions now that SMU's lost their top receiver.
Were you on the college football playoff conference call yesterday?
I was tweeting out their data sources. I knew that would get people fired up.
So let me ask you this, because you said that, and this thing came up yesterday as they were talking about it, and they leave a little bit. The playoff committee leaves a little bit of room for ambiguity, because when it's all said and done, they said strength of schedule would matter, but then there's this subjective thing called the eye test, right? And then it's like, wait a second, because I think it was Mike Griffin was kind of trying to pin them down on certain things. It was kind of a little bit of a dance around as far as that is concerned.
Yep.
The process, though, it doesn't. FSU was undefeated last year, but because the quarterback got injured, it's like, well, he can't make it in, right? So, give me your thoughts on the whole process of selections itself. Are there flaws?
There's flaws whenever you put a human. I should, if I say this, there's some AI robot going to mow me down here. There's problems when you put human thinking into it, right? When you put the eye test into it, because I've always said this, it'll never happen. The college football playoff should be driven by odds makers. They would tell you who the 12 best teams are before anyone would, because we're all tired of 21-point spreads in college football playoff games. Like, we don't want that to happen anymore. But where I think what you're hearing from the committee is that strength of schedule is really important. And they said they named their data source, which was Sports Source Analytics. And then there were questions about, can we get visibility around that strength of schedule? I'm actually staring at the formula right now. I do have access to Sports Source Analytics.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to know what it is, it's opponent's record, opponent's record, conference opponent's record, non-conference opponent record, opponent record, overall wins and overall losses. They combine that into a bunch of percentages, get it down to a decimal point, and that's how they define strength of schedule here. So you're looking at your opponents as being one big piece of the pie here. So that now you got to start doing some digging on some teams. It's a good thing there's a calculation for the committee. I don't think, Anwar, that they've ever tried to hide what they're doing in the room. Do I think they would swap seeds for TV? You can't tell me, Anwar, that the 8-9 seed is going to be the most hotly contested thing in the world. Like, who gets a home game? Would you rather have, say Kansas State or Notre Dame? You're probably going to want to have a South Bend home game, right? How do you determine the difference between the 8 and the 9? It's going to be eyeballs and money and ticket sales and everything else.
No, 100%. The same way, you rather have it in Texas or, any of these other Penn State or, any of these other places. So it would make sense. So, last thing, and I'll let you go. The committee, obviously, they'll have something starting on Tuesday, election night of all nights.
Crazy.
What couldn't thought of it another week, right? But
trying to melt down social media in one night. So,
a lot of people.
Anwar, don't forget, it's the return of Maction too. So it's the third thing that's in there also.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So yeah, it's going to be it's a crazy thing. What do you expect? Do you have any expectations for what we should expect on Tuesday next week?
I believe the committee is going to tell us right away whether they value SEC teams with multiple losses over undefeated teams. Where does Indiana fall with respect to, say, Texas A&M, right? Where do they fall with respect to LSU? Where is the pecking order after the one-loss teams? Of course, you're going to have some jockeying of probably Georgia in front of Texas, right? But then after that break of the team that has one losses, where do you start placing them? That should tell us the pecking order between the ACC, the Big 12 teams that have one less loss than SEC teams. To me, that is where is Ohio State in relevance to Texas and to Georgia, right? Do they value their loss at Oregon ahead of, say, Texas, who got beat by Georgia? Like the placement of Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas is going to be very interesting.
I know I said last thing, but this is the for real last thing. Last year, Texas had a close wins, but it was kind of ugly against like a Houston, a TCU, a K-State, but it still ended up making the playoffs when it's all said and done. While it hasn't looked pretty maybe over the last couple of weeks, you give Texas still a shot of making it to the national championship game?
Absolutely, I do. I think if they can avoid defensive lines that absolutely wreck offenses, and like the two I said, Georgia and Texas A&M, it's not that Texas can't beat those teams. They've just got to come with their A game. They're going to have to pack a sandwich and a lunch pail, and they're going to have to come ready to fight because that's the kind of defenses they're going to have to face to win the national title. There's not really another team I can name out there. I think they could beat Penn State's defensive line. I think that they could take care of Indiana's defensive line. I think they could take care of Ohio State's defensive line. I think Texas has a lot of shots. A shot against any team in the nation, but the ones with the tough defensive lines are the ones that are giving the most trouble, and that to me is Texas A&M and Georgia.
Collin, tell everybody where they can find your work, Action Network, everything about it. Just go ahead and read the script.
Yeah, my Twitter is @_Collin1, COLLIN1. You can find all of our work at our new YouTube channel, the BBOC, the Big Bets on Campus. It's a channel we just started this summer. Everything you need. We podcast about everything from Akron to Fresno State. We kind of mix that in with the marquee games, so you get a flavor of everything out there. Anything you need, you can find at actionnetwork.com.
And tell everybody why you got UTEP behind you.
Yeah. So UTEP a couple of years ago, their win total in Vegas was 1.5, and walked up to the counter, I think sometime in early June at the South Point. I said, I want over 1.5. And they said, what kind of person comes in here and lays this kind of money on UTEP over 1.5 in June? I said, me. And I came back. They got over 2 wins that season. Had to buy a helmet and get it in the background. So I will always be a part of Miner Nation for helping me add to my family structure.
How much did you put down, Collin?
Enough for them to notice in June. I can tell you that. Let's just put it that way. Hopefully my ex-wife's not watching. I didn't put anything down. You didn't hear anything about this.
Collin Wilson from the Action Network. Good to see you, brother, man. I'll see you online. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Anwar.
All right, buddy. Take care. Collin Wilson. Now, that's a man in the know. Damn it, man. If that guy can pull that off, woo! Yes, and by the way, someone said it earlier. Yeah, you gotta do a shot. Gotta do a shot. It's Anwar. Known him for years. Saying Anwar. Gotta have the going to have to school him on that one at some point because I was kind of I was a little cringy. It was a little cringy, but it's okay. It's okay. Good dude, really good stuff. So I like him a lot. Another person that I do like a lot, obviously, you guys know where my segues are going. Eric Torres. If you're looking for a home in the DFW area, you know he's got you covered. Buying a home, selling a home, whatever it is, you hit him up. There's a QR code. Check out the Google reviews, the Yelp reviews. Check out everything. It's November, just about tomorrow. So I didn't put any Halloween costumes on today. But I was just thinking I could have put a mask on, but then my kids were like, we can't wear masks to school. I'm like, well, that's actually a good thing. So totally get it. Eric Sells Homes, Random Thoughts by Anwar. DFW, make sure you check him out and make sure you tell him that your favorite unk sent you. I hope everyone's having a good day. And then, of course, party time.
Specs same-day delivery can save the day with our Specs app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets. It's Specs. Cheers to savings.
And cheers to everybody who is here in the chat. Make sure you hit the like button when you see it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We still gonna have a Prize Pick show coming up in a little bit. We're still gonna get that thing knocked out, and there may not be any games, but we're still going to talk Prize Picks and some of our thoughts and projections for the upcoming weekend. So make sure you guys check that out. If you join me late, go back in, hit the rewind button, and go and see all the good stuff that's going on. I'll see y'all. Ooh, may not see y'all tomorrow. My kids got an event at school, so I may not see you tomorrow. May end up being on Monday. If that ends up being the case, have a good weekend. Remember to always say, live each day like it was your last, because one day it will be. We'll talk soon.